So let's dive into it. So yeah, just looking at the net sales, compared to the previous fiscal year, it does decline expected. I think all their forecasts, they made their forecasts. They had to revise it twice in the fiscal year, so it was expected. Why did they have the decline? I think it's pretty obvious. Hardware sales, in general, lower than expected software sales. They expected a decline, of course, because Switch is nearing the end of its life cycle. They're preparing for another release of a console, so they expected a decline. I said they didn't expect this much decline because they had to revise their forecast more than once, especially hardware, and they still didn't meet their hardware forecast even after the double revision, which I said they won't meet. But they did meet their software forecast, which I was slightly impressed by. I think Mario Party Jamboree did more sales than I expected, far more. But I think we'll get into that later, but that just clear cut on that. But they still maintain a healthy margins overall. They still maintain a healthy margins overall. Their gross margins like 61%, which is fantastic. Operating margin is still quite high. So yeah, I think they've done really well overall. So you can't really complain. Essentially, net sales declined, about 10%, nothing too major. Many things declined, but gross profits declined, whatnot. But the operating expenses also declined slightly, which also kind of expected, because the Switch is entering the end of its life cycle. Not going to be putting a lot of investments towards the Switch as well. So advertising is going to be reduced, marketing is going to be reduced, sales activities are going to be reduced. So a lot of things are going to be reduced comparing to it. I think the only thing that rose was R&D costs, which is expected in considering they're launching a new system. But yeah, it's slightly below what they expected, but within range. It was only about 3%, like almost 4% lower than what they forecast in terms of net profit. Yes, they didn't meet their forecast, but eventually they got there in the end, at least close to it as possible in the end. So once again, we can see that America, contributes majority of their sales, 42%, 44%, 44.2%, which means tariff is really going to affect them if tariff is placed on it. Japan still contributes healthy margin, but not up to 25%. Europe even does more than Japan, which is expected, more people. But Japan are still the kings in Japan, and the other region has been growing steadily every year. Like the region grew 21%, and by others, China, Africa, Middle East, whatever. So those are the places that seem to be growing, which is impressive. I do know that they have been seeing some traction in other regions compared to previous consoles, and I think Nintendo is expanding as well to other places, little by little, which makes sense. Sony, that's one of Sony's strong points, that they've been able to penetrate Middle East, Africa, and I think they're looking to see how they can penetrate China as well. Of course, those places don't bring in as much revenue as the Americas and Europe and whatever, but you want to sell as much hardware as possible to as many places as possible, and even if it's just a little bit of software sales you're getting from the few that can afford in those across the globe, I think that still makes sense in the long run, and that's just more money and more revenue in the long run. So anyway, you can get the sales, even if you don't need to spend, you don't need to spend marketing and sales effort in those locations. Those people will import it from nearby, and you still get those sales essentially. So yeah, I think as long as it's region friendly and it makes sense and it's easy for people to get those consoles and just use them from across the globe, I think it makes sense. And Switch 2 will probably do well in Japan as well, especially the fact that it's going to be cheaper. The model that's going to be cheaper, though it's going to be only Japanese only, but it's going to be a cheaper model, and I think that's still fine overall. So yeah, I said gross profits was still maintained 61% is very high gross ratio. Just showing you the proportion of sales that was their hardware for 3%. It makes sense. That's a huge chunk of their sales, slightly higher than last fiscal year, but also great. First party sales decreased slightly, which is also a good thing because it means more third party sold more, but it's still 30%, over 30%, just over 30%, not so significant. Less than 30%, sorry. So not so significant, but at least these third parties get to sell more this period. Though I think the release slate was not just strong enough first party wise, so that's why third party could sell as much as it did. So if they had a strong first party release, would represented be 80 something percent, just like the previous fiscal year? They will know. The digital ratio has increased significantly, so more digital gains. And judging by the Switch 2, how expensive the memory cards are, how expensive even the physical versions are in Europe, the physical is more expensive than digital versions. I think we're going to see this percentage increase over the years as the Switch 2 launches. So expect that. So I said earlier, their operating profits decreased, but their expenses didn't increase too much as well on operating expenses, and it just helps to ensure that they're not really spending too much in general. Now that the Switch is at the end of its life cycle, so which is good. So everything in terms of their total operating expenses dropped largely due to advertising expenses, because they don't really need to advertise so much at this point in time. The Switch is nearing its end. By this fiscal year, I'm sure they're going to wrap up their advertising and ad spending to the T. So yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of spending going on, so it makes sense. So, as I said, it just makes sense. Yes, non-operating income as well decrease. There's a lot of decrease here and here again, and non-operating expenses increase as well significantly. Foreign exchange losses too, and all those things. So it comes and goes, but overall, the net profit decreased significantly, but not too much. It's still 23.9%. That's still a healthy net profit margin for the owners. And I said they forecasted something not too far within the range of their forecast, was about 4% decline in terms of the range that they had. And of course they still have a strong cash reserve, about $10.1 billion US in the bank. So they are doing quite well. So nothing to be too worried about in general. So declines in operating profit by 5.8%. Operating expenses declined about total of 14.5%. Advertising probably leading that in majority of ordinary profit declined 6.9%, and cost of sales declined 9.6%. So it's like overall some declines there, but everything declined as well. So I think the business is still healthy, and I think we're going to be seeing some healthy numbers come next year. It's going to be some healthy numbers come next year. They're fantastic stuff. And so what are they forecasting for next year? For next year forecast, we can see here that they're expecting 61%, 63.1% growth in net sales, operating profit 13.1%, 7.6 increase in net profit, ordinary profit 2.1%. So they're expecting to do well. They're expecting the yen to be around 129. So compared to the US dollar, so fine, I guess. So looking forward to how this year turns out. But hardware numbers, they're expecting to sell 15 million Nintendo Switch 2 units next year, and just 4.5 million units Nintendo Switch, which is a huge drop off compared to the 10 million, around 10 million they sold this year. The huge drop off. Well, yeah. It's fine. It's fine. They're gonna do well in terms of numbers this year. So yeah. In terms of are they going to meet their Switch 2 forecasts? That I don't know. It depends on tariffs. So this way I'm gonna do a bit of prediction. If tariffs really impact them and they change prices and increase the prices, then they are probably going to sell around 14.5, near 15, but not up to 15. If there's no tariff and the price stays the same, they will meet this forecast and possibly even surpass this forecast. It's a possibility. I think that is a possibility, because the Switch Nintendo Switch this year sold 10.8 million, even at its low year. So they may not be able to maybe match the production to meet high demand and the higher prices and the higher game prices as well. It depends on how consumers react to those things, at least beyond the early adopters in this period, how they react to the initial couple of months, how they react. Because for me, someone like me that has another system, buying the Switch 2 at launch doesn't really make sense to me. And aside from the prices, which I already done my rant about, so there's no need to do that here. I think if you have a system, you probably play a lot of third-party games, and unless you're a real Mario, you really like Mario Kart, I don't see the point. Donkey Kong, still not sure on that. They've not released for Metro Prime yet. I love Pokemon, but I'm not sure if I'm going to get the Switch 2 for that specifically. So there's a lot of uncertainty with that here. But let's see when the game launches, when the system launches next month. About less than a month from launch now, so we'll get to know how well to perform then. So software, 105 units in terms of software sales on the Nintendo Switch, and then 55 million units on Nintendo Switch 2. I think they'll probably meet their software numbers. The software seems to really do well for them, and they met their, even though they revised their forecasts like twice this year, they still did well. So regarding the forecast, so I said if there's no tariff, will probably be around 16 million, probably break a record and be around 16 million units, or they'll probably just be around 15 or near 15. But if the increased prices, I don't see them getting this forecast. Just to brief history, this fiscal year they initially planned to get 13.5 million units, which I said was ridiculous as far as I'm concerned, because there was no way this firm in the last year of his life would do that number. Software was 165, so not really good. So first revision, which of course they revised it, they looked at 125, 12.50 million units and 160 million software. I still said that was too high. It didn't make sense because they didn't have the lineup to back up those kind of numbers as far as I was concerned, the hardware and the software situation. Of course, they revised again, 2025 this year to 11 million units for hardware and 150 million units for software. Then I said, I was not sure of software. I thought they probably may not get software again, maybe around 145 million units. I was wrong on that one. But hardware, they said 11 million units. I was strongly sure that they won't sell the numbers they were thinking to make that 11 million units. Eventually, they got to 10.80, close but not up to it. But they did beat their software numbers by around 5.4 million units. So yeah, they did well on that, and I think Mario Party Jamboree was the reason for that. But more on that later. So just some business highlights once again. Mario Party Jamboree, 7.48 million units. I didn't expect that to sell so much. Mario Kart, a deluxe, of course, one of the highest performance this year, still remains a high performer. Legends of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom did well as well. Switch Sports, don't know why it's selling, but it's there. And give or take, I think it just helps. It doesn't really drive those software numbers, and the reason why they were able to meet those numbers. Mario Party Jamboree, especially, it has really done well in terms of sales. And I understand why they are now remaking it for Switch 2 and whatnot. Yeah, done really well. Just some sell-through numbers once again. Good sell-through numbers globally. Good annual playing users on a global basis. 128 million, so it dropped from 1 million compared to the last time they reported. Nothing too major, but yeah, just showing their evergreen titles as well. The titles that they've done really well in recent releases. Those of you who bought Donkey Kong Country HD Remastered, like you guys are not the fans I enjoy. But I understand why is that game selling 1 million units. But let me not be a hater. That's fine. Same thing with Luigi's Mansion 2 HD. Once again, why 1.6 million units? But once again, Brothership, okay. Paper Mario done well enough. Zelda and Mario Party Jamboree done well as well. Mario Kart seems to be doing well. Mario Wonder 2 is picking up in sales. Smash is also doing really well, selling 2 million units, which is good. Animal Crossing 2.5, they've done really well in terms of their evergreen titles, and great stuff from them. Yeah, they've also sold 152.12 million Nintendo Switch units, which is great, on their way to beating the PS2. I don't know if they'll get to 160 million units, but if the Switch continues getting support and continues to sell, I think by 2026, late 2026, you'll probably catch up with the PS2. They're expecting to sell 4 million units this fiscal year, so maybe that's a stretch. So maybe 2027, early 2027, they can catch up with PS2 and be the highest selling console of all time. So yeah, 2027, I think that would be when the Switch will be officially the highest selling console of all time. In terms of the top selling titles, we have some changes to that as well. Not much in terms of the ranking, but yeah, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe has continued to sell ridiculous numbers. I think Mario Kart World has strongly differentiated itself from Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, so I'm happy to see they probably do well with that as well. Animal Crossing New Horizons is doing well as well. Continue to sell good numbers, about 2.5 million, as you've seen earlier. This as well. Smash is going to do well. Zelda, Mario Odyssey, Pokemon officially. This is the first time it's the first time that in Pokemon franchise that a second mainline game has outsold a first mainline game on the same system in terms of Pokemon sales, and this is a huge milestone for Nintendo and the Pokemon company. I think it's since Gold and Silver did not outsell Red, Blue, and Yellow, Black and White did not outsell Diamond and Pearl, Sun and Moon did not outsell X and Y. It doesn't really happen. It's the first time ever that a second mainline game on the same hardware has sold more than the first mainline game to come out with the same hardware. DS didn't happen. The Game Boy Advance games, it didn't happen. It's an incredible stuff. So I think the Game Boy Advance games they only had one game on the system, if I strongly remember correctly. Ruby, Sapphire, Emerald, before Diamond and Pearl. So maybe those ones didn't have an opportunity, but even the remakes, even remakes is difficult for a second remake to outsell the first one. So, but this is the first time that this has happened, and great milestone for Pokemon Company and Nintendo. It means that the franchise is healthy and it's going to continue to grow. and it's officially the second highest selling Pokemon game ever. So just about 5 million plus to beat 31.8 million of red, blue, and yellow games. So let's see if they will do that in a couple of years. Good sales for this, but the other side of the kingdom has had a very strange sales trajectory. So I think this fiscal year is about 1 million units, compared to 20 plus million sold the first fiscal year it came out. This second fiscal year, and the sales are not the sales kind of fell off a cliff now, which is not surprising, but when you sell about 20 million units in like the first week, it's very hard to match that. But I think it's pretty obvious that many of those 20 million shipped copies at the time of playing that moment. We just shipped copies, we're not really sell through, so just shipped. So it was over shipped, and it took them a long time to actually sell those 20 million copies that were shipped in terms of sell through, and that's why this fiscal year is only doing like 1 million. Even Breath of the Wild still did like almost 1 million, around 900k. So that just shows that the legs are not anything too impressive. It's 1 million is still good, but it came out last year. I'm expecting more. It's not Mario Kart, so I'm not expecting 6 million or whatever, but maybe 2-3. Breath of the Wild did 4 million like several years in a row, back to back, like 3 fiscal years like 4 million. So I was expecting to do something similar, but 1 million is not bad. But I think maybe the Switch 2 release will give it more life and become a better selling evergreen title. Mario Party, Super Mario Party doing well. I think Mario Party Jamboree on this Switch 2 will probably outsell this one when you combine it with the Nintendo Switch version as well. This also still retains this elite spots, which is good. I don't know how people like this game, but it seems to be holding its position, and maybe Super Mario Wonder will overtake it in due time. I don't know about that, but let's see. I really need to play that game as well. Yeah. Really impressed by their performance overall. I said Mario Party Jamboree is still one of the impressive titles to see to date. Cumulative sell through 24 weeks after one of the highest compared to the other Mario Party releases, and those ones have sold good numbers. Super Mario Party has sold good numbers of global, but this one is on track to probably be one of the highest selling Mario Karts, especially since it's coming on Switch 2 as well. Mario Party, sorry, not Mario Kart. So digital sales proportion, you can see, as I said earlier, it's been increasing. They've been shuffling between around 40% to 50%. They've been shuffling and moving around that. But they've rounded up the year around 52%, which is not so bad. They do well. So Nintendo has a weird way of tracking their software sales. So the yellow is download only software sales, add-on content. So the Switch Online stuff and downloadable versions of package software. There's a software that has physical releases and that have not digital version, so they kind of do it separately. Essentially, their proportion of sales, general sales are digital. It's been increasing, and of course, package versions dropped this year because the lineup was not strong enough. So that's what really has brought down their digital versions. It'll probably be up to over 60%, by now. So it's fantastic stuff there. So I think we'll see this ratio. This ratio will continue to grow strongly in the next fiscal year. So they had a very high digital sales, in this quarter, 62.9, and which is very high for the quarter. But overall, you see, they've been started at 60, they dropped to 58, 53, and they've had a huge boost. But of course, sales overall was low, and digital made up for everything. So which means of course more margins for them. They sell more digitally, and of course they have more games still coming to the original Nintendo Switch. even though the Switch 2 is launching this year, we have Pokemon coming out this year, Metro Prime, Rhythm Heaven, Tomodachi Life next year, and of course Pokemon Champion, which is still to be revealed. And yeah, Switch 2 launches less than a month from now. Hoping it goes well. It'll probably go well, and they're gonna have a massive launch. Game chats, well, let's not say too much on these features. The only thing here that makes sense to me is game share, which is where you can share your games with others, and that's the only thing that makes sense in this slide as far as I'm concerned. Switch 2 lineup as well. Launch lineup of Mario Kart World makes sense. Next one after that we have Donkey Kong Bonanza, makes sense. I don't know what the other game is. Summer 2025 we have Dragon Drive and we have KB Air Riders. So, and which is still so surprising that we haven't seen anything about this even though it's coming out this year. So let's wait and see. So other games as well, 2 editions have already been announced. The 2 Zeldas, Mario Party Jamboree, Metro Prime, and of course Zelda and Pokemon ZA. Looking forward to seeing that version as well. Of course, third-party games as well, great stuff as well. So something like Split Fiction. If you haven't played Split Fiction and you want to get it, I think the Switch version is a great way to play Split Fiction as well. Now just play it on the Switch and hand your second player the other Joy-Con and you're good to go. So yeah, and of course they have some experiences coming up as well. The Nintendo store in San Francisco is coming up May 15th. Great. They're opening up, Super Nintendo World scheduled to open up at Universal Epic Universe, Orlando, USA. Super Nintendo, I think they're opening up a Super Nintendo World at Universal Epic Universe, which is a very strange name, but Orlando, USA, on May 22nd, so later this month as well. And they've announced Zelda movies coming out next 2 years. Mario movies coming out next year, I believe. So they're really working on that. Nintendo Today app, not really interested in downloading the app. I think other apps already do that, so I'm not that huge of a Nintendo fan to dive into an app that has only India news. So, and some general reference materials and whatnot. I think that just wraps up the presentation and their outlook and whatnot. So what I'll just say is this: I'm looking forward to the Switch 2 launch. Less than a month away. So probably make a couple of videos on that. But it's gonna be fantastic thing to see going forward. I'm really looking forward to what they will achieve with the Switch 2. I'm really looking forward to what they will achieve with the Switch 2. Nintendo, they're gonna be very successful.